This is the DTV Digest, the podcast that brings you news and reviews of films which didn't make it to the cinema. And now, here's your host, Mike Parkin.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to the DTV Digest. I'm your host, Mike Parkin, and joining me tonight is Richard Hawes.
Hello, everyone.
And later on in the show, we'll have Will Bentley. In this week's show, we are kicking off with a film called Vesper. Then we have Take Back the Night, He's Watching, and Crimson Point. Then we have Demons at Dawn and Reportage, where Will be joining me on those two. Our short shot this week is Dead End, and we're going to wind up with our throwback Outpost Black Sun. So without further ado, let's crack on. Our first film this week is Vesper. Struggling to survive with her father after the collapse of Earth's ecosystem, 13-year-old Vesper must use her wits, strength, and biohacking abilities to fight for the future. Unfortunately, I'm the only one who's actually seen this film this week. In fact,
I've got a taster of it. I saw the first 20 minutes.
Okay. In fact, I saw this as part of the Mayhem Festival in Nottingham over the weekend. So, yeah, plus points for me. Got to see it on the big screen, which is very impressive. This is really good. It's got a brilliant bit of world building. It sets it out at the beginning, saying what's happened to the Earth. You know how mankind has tried to combat things like climate change and famine by tampering with sort of the biosystem basically, and it's all gone horribly wrong. The world actually reminded me a bit. Did you see the film Love and Monsters, Rich?
No, but we have talked about it.
We have talked about it. Yeah, we have reviewed it on the show, which had a sort of similar idea where the Earth, is had its sort of like, biology, its DNA sort of rewritten. So you get all these sort of wonderful and bizarre types of flowers and plants. The flora that's going on, and one of these sort of integral parts is the fact that there's the characters called jars, or who are, or jaris, I think they're called, and basically they're humans who've been cloned in a lab. They've been sort of grown from scratch, basically, to use as a sort of slave workforce. They're supposed to be not sentient. They're just sort of drones. There's that sort of side to it. There's also these big citadels who control everything, and one of the things they do is they've reprogrammed the DNA of plant seeds so they'll only germinate once. So after you've planted your crops and harvested them, then you're going to have to go back to the citadel to get the next lot of seeds that they're not going to produce more. Yeah. And that's how they sort of control what's going on in the sort of wider populace. And in the middle of this, we got this girl called Vesper who lives with her dad. Her dad used to be a bigwig within the citadel, but he had an accident. Now he's totally bedridden. He can't move. His brain has actually been taken out of his body, and he has this sort of telepathic connection to this this sort of drone bot thing. This big sort of sphere, which they've sort of painted a face on it, which reminds me of Winston from the Castaway film, the Tom Hanks one.
Oh yeah, and I also thought of the Mace Brothers cyborg soldier. I can't remember the title of it. Remember the sort of action futuristic film with that sort of sardonic robot character, which I guess all goes back to Hitchhiker's Guide and
exactly. So yeah, I think the world building is brilliant. This special effects around that sort of thing is great. There
seems a bit of a Gilliam aspect to it all.
There is, yeah, but without without pushing it too far, you know, I mean, this really does feel like a lived-in world. So you know, one of the antagonists is Vesper's uncle, who, you know, he's like the lord of the manor and the sort of main farmer in the local area.
Is that Jonas, played by Eddie Marsan?
Yeah, that's it. And he controls a lot of stuff going on.
Mm-hmm.
And then we meet this young woman from the Citadel. She was in this sort of craft that crashes, and she becomes very integral to the story as well. It builds really nicely. You know, I think it's a little bit too long for its own good, but you know, it's done such a good job of sort of building this world, and it gets quite surreal towards the end. There's a bit of action, sort of probably about 3/4 of the way in. Not a lot, but just a bit. But I think overall, that, you know, this is really, really good. I thoroughly enjoyed this. I mean, you only saw the first sort of 20 minutes, Rich, as you said, but
yeah, you kind of got, like you say, you got a taste for the world building, and you know, all the creatures and the whole thing with the blood and the like you say, the sort of the slave race basically, and you know, the Eddie Marsan's character's giving this boy a gun, and he's like, kill it, you know, it's like it doesn't feel anything, and at the same time, it's clearly reacting in a very emotional way.
Exactly, it's kind of like asking him to kill a pig or something, you know. It's like, oh no, it's just an animal; it won't feel anything. But yeah, of course, it's going to feel something, you know.
And I noticed the father was played by Richard Brake, popular, you know, recognized genre actor going back. I mean, the highest profile stuff is kind of the stuff he's done with Rob Zombie recently, but but he's been around for donkey's years, working mainly working a lot in the UK and stuff, but I think he's American or Canadian, I'm not sure, but he's very recognizable. I quite liked seeing him. But yeah, he's like all in the bed, isn't he? And he's got all the like you say, it's all gritty and grimy and dirty. You know, it's but
at the same time, you know, she's got this sort of weird computer thing where she can sort of like map out the DNA of the plants and sort of, you know, all that sort of stuff, which is all really interesting. You know, the way she's able to sort of try and hack into the DNA to try and work out how to regerminate the seeds, that sort of thing. It is very well done, and it does sort of build nicely.
They've gone to a lot of effort to sort of make this, you know, to try and develop it and show it, and you know, like a, you know how like pure, like proper science fiction novels really get into the nitty gritty and try and make it completely convincing that this is a thing, and they seem to have really gone the extra mile. They haven't just sort of thrown something out there. They're like,
exactly,
yeah, they're like developing the idea, sort of trying to grow it to create, like I say, make it a fully convincing, fully realized environment. It's got a very sort of post-apocalyptic kind of feel to it in those opening 20 minutes. Is that maintained, or do we get to the Citadel and it's all very
we never
grand,
do
or?
Yeah, I was wondering if it ever would, but you know, there are sort of key reasons why we don't, you know. I thought that it might go in that direction, you know, so you'd end up with that sort of contrast, but we do get that contrast a little bit because these soldiers from the Citadel turn up, and there's a sort of, you know, a real sort of step change between the different levels of technology that are going on. You know, sort of the Citadels have these aircraft and things, you know, and you know, these soldiers with actual weapons, whereas everyone else is just running around in the mud, basically. You know, that's how
so it's kind of haves and have-nots kind of thing.
There is very much that, and you know, as I said, you know, they're desperate to sort of keep the populace in place. There's also this thing that where you know, Eddie, who do you say it was, the uncle, the actor?
Jonas, Eddie Marsan.
Yeah, Eddie Marsan. So one of the things he has to do in order to get seeds from the, you know, the Citadel, is he trades them for blood. So you've got various people who have to sort of give blood. You know, if you want anything from him, you have to give him a couple of pints of blood. You know, give transfusion. And there's a point where he sort of actually stands around to them, and goes, "Why? You know, why do you need the blood?" He never gets an answer from them, but you know, there's that sort of element. yeah, his character is quite interesting. You know, he comes across as kind of benevolent and benign, but really he's not. You know, under the surface, he's he's a real mean bastard, basically, and he's trying to force Vesper and her dad to sort of leave their own sort of homestead and come live with his sort of within his sort of village. And he sort of pulls a few sort of things to try and force their hand. But yeah, it's just really good. You know, really, really well done. Really enjoyed it. On that note, I'm definitely giving this an 8 out of 10. I believe who's releasing this on, Rich? I don't want to get it wrong.
So this is out from Signature.
Signature, that's right.
This is getting a cinema release as well as a premium VOD release. So most people are going to see it in their homes, but some people will have the opportunity to see it at their
yeah, exactly. I saw it on the big screen. I thoroughly enjoyed this. There's some really sort of surreal moments towards the end as well, which worked really well. And the final shot, you know, it's one of those ones. It's just incredibly satisfying. After everything you've seen, it just works really, really well. So yeah, an 8 out of 10 for Vesper. I certainly recommend you go check this one out. Our next review is Take Back the Night. Finding herself the victim of a violent monster attack, Jane launches a vigilante campaign to hunt the beast that tried to kill her. Jane's efforts intensify, but her troubling history of drug use and mental illness bubbles to the surface, causing her family, community, and authorities to question the authenticity of her account. This isn't the first. Well, this is one of two films we're covering tonight, Rich, which leans heavily into things like social media. And sort of that side of things, and it's not exactly fourth wall breaking. It's almost as if it's a fifth wall in a way, in the way that we have, the public at large sort of commenting on the events of the film.
Mm-hmm.
It's weird, it's almost a bit like the film Rubber.
Oh yeah.
Where you got the killer tire, and then you got an audience sort of watching.
You got like Wings Hauser and that are all sitting in their deck chairs and stuff.
All that sort of stuff. So it's an interesting thing. It's another film which sort of relies on, or it's another film which merges art and horror as well. We have this sort of young artist who
reminded me of, because we did Painted in Blood recently, so
and things like Bliss things as well, which is and we get this sort of thing where she's at this party and then leaves and gets attacked by something in this alley, basically. And it's very much an allegory of the whole sort of victim blaming culture that still sort of surrounds sort of rape, sexual assault, that sort of thing. There's a huge element of that, and that is people sort of doubting her story, even when she's trying to sort of capture video footage of what attacked her. People are still doubting what she's presenting them, because everyone's so goddamn jaded. It's like, oh, it's a nice effect, all that sort of bollocks. But I did like this. I like the style of it. That opening bit with the party and that, and in the alleyway, I thought was very well shot, very well. The cinematography was great for that. The lighting and everything. The sort of camera style will really fit it. I mean, sometimes that sort of thing can be a bit jarring, but I think for this it kind of worked, I must admit. So yeah, I was pretty much on board with this one. How about you?
Yeah, I liked it a lot. It was I really liked the aesthetic of the film. The director is also the cinematographer, Gia Elliott.
That's right.
So she's given, or is it G? Is she credited in differently? Gia Vangieri. I think she's on IMDb. She's listed with one name, and it says as thing. So I think she goes by two names. But yeah, so she wrote co-wrote the film with the lead actress Emma Fitzpatrick, who was also really good in it. Very, it is another one of the, as I've commented on recently, of the is she crazy kind of movie, which we see a lot, where you focus on a female protagonist, something's happening to her. Is it all in her head or whatever? I was particularly reminded of a film called, looking at different titles, it was The Captive or Alone or Captives. It's got various different titles, but that was the one where she was a victim of human trafficking, I believe, in that one, and it was she went to the house and there was stuff going on, and
that's right. She was led to believe it was like an inheritance or something, but then it turns out to be her previous captor. Sort of kind of set her up again.
So that kind of came to mind. I was also thinking in terms of the attack, and because obviously there's the overtones of sexual assault. It really made me, and I've never seen it, but it's a film that the idea of it stuck with me ever since I heard of it, which was way back in the 80s, called The Entity.
Oh yeah, I have seen that.
Which is
I
don't know if I've got the wrong idea about it, but my understanding of that film was basically a woman is under threat of sexual assault from an apparition, or
a poltergeist, basically, or something like that. It is good. There are some weird bits in it, but overall it was quite a decent film.
So I liked the social media stuff. Again, that kind of reminded me of The Columnist, which was the film we watched. I think it's like Swedish or Danish.
Danish, I think.
And so there's lots in here that's because that was all social media and everything. But I think the character of Jane, and the way she's portrayed, the way she's the performance works really well. The makeup and stuff is fantastic, of the bruises and things that she gets. All that's very interesting. The visual effects on when they appear are quite. I'm not quite sure about them, but it's kind of got. It could go two ways on that, but it wasn't detrimental. But the overall, I thought it was really good. I was very drawn in, really liked it a lot, and I would probably watch it again.
Yeah, definitely. I really did like this. It's interesting as well that the whole sort of like sort of trial by social media aspect of it is quite resonant at the moment, because there's something going on with there's a woman from OnlyFans. I won't go into too much detail about it, but there is this sort of element where she sort of come forward and sort of made a statement about her sort of marital issues, and it is that case of sort of trial by media kind of thing, because people are sort of there's a lot of victim shaming because of her background on OnlyFans and stuff like this, which it's incredibly distasteful, to be honest, the sort of the way it's been handled. But you can see whether or not you agree with the sort of the language being used, you can see how realistic that sort of situation would be, and how people these are supposed to be her fans, and they're sort of turning on her and all this sort of stuff, and disbelieving her, and it's there's definitely a sort of realistic element to the way it plays out, I think. So overall, Rich, how are you going to score it?
I feel like giving this an 8.
Yeah, I think I agree with you. 2 8s for Take Back the Night. Go check it out. Our next review is He's Watching. A brother and sister discover a presence in their home while their parents are in the hospital suffering a mystery illness that seems to only affect adults. The siblings team up to discover what the presence is and how to escape it. This is sort of the other film I was alluding to, which has this sort of very savvy sort of media approach to what it's doing. So we've got these two, young teens, basically. Well, one's a young teen, the other's younger, who, basically keeping a video diary of their life without their parents, who are in hospital, I suppose, as a huge allusion to COVID. basically, but I think the idea is it might be something even weirder. And then sort of realizing that something's sort of messing with them inside the house as they go. At first, I was not sure about this. When it's just sort of the two kids sort of like just doing shit and playing pranks on each other and all that sort of crap. Oh God, no!
And you're not a kids in movies kind of guy.
I am not a kids kind of movie.
And this is movie anchored by the kids. The kids are pretty much the only characters.
Exactly. However, I think it gets to a certain point, probably about 2/3 of the way in, when there's this incredibly strange dream sequence involving these two kids, and part of it is fueled by like a DVD cover. It turns out that their parents, or at least their dad, is a film and TV producer, and he's made like a couple of horror films and things. And one of the DVD covers they find has, sort of some key imagery on it, which turns out to be sort of subliminally in their head. So you get these sort of dream sequences, which are kind of freaky, like when the people are sort of painted all in red. And that sort of thing, and that sequence was really, really good, and it was really well edited, really well put together, and the film kind of built from there for me. That's when I started to sort of really engage with it, until the end, and it's like, okay, what did I just watch? By the end of it, but I can kind of forgive it that when we get that sort of epilogue, it's just a weird sort of setup at the end. How do you get on with this one, Rich?
But, a bit like better than I thought I was going to, because when it starts, I thought it was a found footage movie, and then you quickly realise it is sort of home video camera. It's kind of the whole thing.
It's kind of a hybrid, isn't it?
But yeah, it's a hybrid, because you get to you have certain bits, and it's like, well, that can't be found. That can't be the found footage. That's it's just they've added in the. She's walking around with the camera. What they do the whole, why are you filming this kind of thing? Blair Witch Project thing, sort of stuff. So yeah, I suppose Blair Witch is a reasonable comparison, because that was a very low tech sort of thing. But the film that came to mind for me was Hellbender, probably because we've watched it so recently, but also because that is another case of a family made film. The director has cast his two children to make a film during the pandemic, reflecting on the pandemic, although not, like you say, it's not in the movie, it's kind of a different thing. Could be any sort of thing that's happened, but it's that's what it's commenting on, it's reflecting on, it's acting out, it's using that. And I think it does that quite well. There's certain bits that somebody comes up to the door and holds up a sheet of paper and says you can't go out or whatever, and they go to people's houses and they can't be let in, and there's a bit more. They don't just stay in the house, but it is very house based. But I think, and it's probably the director's home. I got that. But the difference is with this one is the director of this, because I'm just looking at his filmography. He's worked in much bigger budget fare, whereas Hellbender, that family, they make those indie low budget movies. This guy, his previous film was a Blumhouse movie with David Oyelowo and McKelty Williamson and stuff like that. So this is kind of a frustrated artist kind of movie.
That's exactly right. Yeah,
he's not able to make something. So he's made it during lockdown to sort of keep himself sane and
his family sane, probably.
Well, probably. I don't wonder how his kids felt about but I thought the kids were really good. I thought they were pretty convincing. I thought they did quite a good job. All the ideas that it's bringing in, it's very, it is experimental in the same way as like Hellbender was.
It's like a fever dream, isn't it? Basically.
Yeah, he adds in all these different elements and stuff, and it does keep your interest. There's, it is familiar. We've seen, like so many things, we've seen a lot of this before. But the sort of there's this kind of boogeyman sort of character who appears. That's quite well done. But it's quite the sort of realistic sort of not backbiting, but the bickering and stuff.
Yeah,
Sister,
sibling rivalry,
getting sibling rivalry and stuff going on, and because you would. I mean, they're living together. They don't, siblings, rub each other up the wrong way anyway. And now they're in this situation where they're stuck together, and they haven't really got any choice. And so at times they don't trust each other, and it's all getting and so they don't really know what's going on. And then they're talking and saying, oh, I've discovered this video and whatnot. And I thought they played that. Yeah, I liked it. I thought it was I'm not a big lover of these sort of lo-fi kind of movies, but I thought it was good what they achieved, and also I quite enjoyed some of the playful stuff, like the end credits.
Yeah.
Which are
that was good.
I think even the opening credits as well. I can't remember, but the how that's all very homemade, and they put these intertitles in and stuff to sort of tell the story, and sort of do like these captions that say, well, a few weeks have gone by, and so it's sort of these strange little novel sort of creative bits that are a bit different to what you might see in a mainstream movie. So I think, if people came across it or give it a chance or whatever, I think they'd probably get quite a lot out of it. I think
so.
Quite enjoy it. Yeah.
This is, it's a low budget film, but it's definitely got some good ideas, some very, very good sort of visual ideas as well. I personally do not like don't like horror films centered around kids too much. But even so, there was some really good elements to this. So on that note, Rich, how are you going to score this?
I'm going to give it a because I think it's really good what they pulled off, and especially the kids and stuff. I'm going to give it a 7.
I'm giving it a 6 out of 10. So a 7 and a 6 for He's Watching. Go check it out. Our next review is Crimson Point. After serving 20 years in prison for the murder of his daughter, Frank returns to his backwoods hometown. Old wounds and rumors of the past resurface and haunt him as he tries to find out who really killed her. Who would have thought, Rich, that in this day and age we'll be watching C. Thomas Howell in an art house thriller?
Well, so certainly compared to the we've got used to seeing him in more like asylum kind of movies
these days.
This is, I think, without sort of tipping my hat too early, I think this is definitely a cut above for the kind of fare that he's generally been offered, as far as I can see. I mean, in terms of what I've seen, there's possibly other really good stuff out there that I haven't seen, but I was really surprised at the role that he's been given here and how he played it.
Yeah, absolutely. He's sort of turned in this performance as a sort of, he could almost be. Who's the guy from Roadhouse? Sam Elliott.
Sam Elliott.
He could almost be Sam Elliott's younger brother. In this one, he's got that sort of real grizzled appearance. The grey hair. I don't know, because when you say the name C. Thomas Howell, I immediately think of the Hitcher or things like that.
Yes.
And to see him now, it's like, oh Christ, we're old. We've got old. Well, at least he has. But he's brilliant at this. He's basically playing the character Frank in 2 different sort of time zones, or three different time zones, kind of. As we see flashbacks of him with his young daughter, and then when she's sort of a bit older, with a friend, and his sort of relationship with them. And then we sort of get this sort of subplot about the sheriff and him sort of stepping down and this new guy sort of taking over.
Don't know if you recognise that was the guy from Puppet Killer.
No, I didn't. Okay. So this is a slow burn. This isn't.
Yes, definitely.
This isn't a. He's out for revenge. Well, he kind of.
That's kind of how they're selling it, but no, it's not.
But no, it's more. And there are reasons why it's not that kind of film, as we find out. But it is very measured. It's just full of great performances, basically, in this mood. The only thing really was some of the editing of the flashbacks, the way they were sort of dropped in, didn't really sort of gel with me. But other than that, I thoroughly enjoyed this. How about yourself?
Yeah, I like. Yeah, it is. It's another sort of slow burning thriller. There's a lot of psychological aspects to it. It's non-linear. It was reminding me of Shot in the Dark, which is literally, I think, last week or the week before we covered that. But that was another thing of kind of an event happened, what really happened, you know, chopping and changing, going over, very slow burn kind of thing. This is a cut above, not just for C. Thomas Howell's performance, his role and his performance here, but also the quality of the film in terms of how it looks. You know, it's really beautifully shot, and although it feels familiar, I thought, and you know, it does go down some well-worn paths. I think it does what it does what it's trying to do well. You know, you don't mind too much. I think there's some risky choices in there. The visual effects on some of the sort of fantastical bits they throw in. They didn't have. That's where the budget limitations are showing. But the rest of it looks really, really good, really sharp. And I think there's not a lot to the. It's quite a basic sort of simple. I sort of liken it to a procedural, because it's all like you don't know exactly what happened, and it's all about, you know, eventually breadcrumbs are dropped, and then they'll do a big, you know, sort of tell you exactly what the score is towards the end of the film. And I think it maintains your interest. You're curious, you know. They're throwing all this stuff out like, was he to be trusted? Did he do the thing they think he did? Was he a sexual predator? And you know, is he a really bad guy? And he's definitely seems to be sort of playing up to that. Or if it's not, he's either actually like that or he's playing up to it. You're not quite sure. He's a character who's, you don't really, inscrutable, is that the word? You don't really know.
He plays his
you don't really get to know him.
Character,
You don't know who he is.
Well,
really.
only through the flashbacks. You know, is where we get to sort of know him.
But yeah, the makeup and I mean the stuff of him in the older. I don't know if they've made him look older, but when they go back to the flashbacks and that you know, it works either way. You know, he does look fairly, you know, convincing in the younger scenes, as well as he does in the old man Howell scenes.
Yeah, no, I think it's a great performance, and it's great to sort of see him get the opportunity to do something like this. I will liken it a little bit to a film we covered a couple of weeks ago called Ash and Dust. With
because I didn't see that one.
Yeah, but this is a better film. You know, it's not as choppy. You know, the flashbacks make sense and things like that. And I was really surprised with a couple of the narrative choices they went with as well. You know, there's things that happen at the end which you probably won't expect. But yeah, I thought it worked really well. Scores on the doors.
I'm going to give that another 7.
I'll join you on a 7 for that one. 2 7s for Crimson Point. Go check it out. Our next review then is Demons at Dawn. This follows a retired hitman who is blackmailed into taking one last job. During his mission, he uncovers an elite satanic cult that uses human sacrifice to summon demons. I think that synopsis only scratches the surface of what we have here, Will. There seems to be more going on. Weirdly, this kind of has a sort of wraparound story, doesn't it? Because it starts off in an American prison, and then sort of jumps back to England, where we get introduced to our eponymous hero, and then at the end we get this other sort of weird little bit. It's almost as if it's sort of you know, they needed to fill out the runtime somehow.
It's weird. I honestly, the two bits of the story really don't I was finding it hard to kind of connect them, because after the American intro in the beginning, and it sort of goes to, like, I don't know, rural, wherever it is, somewhere in the UK. I think Wales. Where was it? Wales?
Possibly, yeah. I think that's where he ends up. Yeah, I think he starts in
Yeah.
London and goes to Wales.
I think it's like, yeah. Anyway, I think, and it's I could be wrong about that. I don't know why I thought that, but like, it's really, you just sort of completely forget about the American connection. It just sort of, there's occasional reference.
Totally, yeah. It totally goes out of your head because nothing actually happens really. I mean, this sort of Asian American woman turns up to berate this guy who owes her not a lot of money. I think in the grand scheme of things,
you could get a payday loan to cover his.
To cover what it is, get Amigo loans or something.
Right. You could do that and then not have to worry about being assassinated while in prison.
Absolutely. There's a lot of people out with his blood, apparently. But never mind that, because we jump straight over to England, where we have this guy called Randy, who's a bit down on his luck with the cards, and been sort of coerced into the what's the word I'm looking for? The classic sort of one last job, basically.
Yeah.
I mean, who in their right mind in a fictional story would take on one last job? It never ends up. It never ends well.
You'd be like, no, I think I'll probably find a different way of making some cash.
I'll sell some blood or something. Give a kidney, anything like that.
Yeah, because this is obviously going to go south immediately.
Absolutely. So he's offered this one last job to go and see this guy, or I can't remember the full details. Is he meant to kill him? I think he's meant to kill him. Except when he gets there, he finds the dude is already dead.
Which at which point he'd be thinking,
job done. Right, let's go.
I'll just take a photo of this and I don't know,
leave.
Maybe,
exactly.
Leave. Unless he's like, I don't know, cut his head off or something and take it. Here's proof, right? Can I have my money? Goodbye. No, it wasn't even, and that was it. It wasn't even money, was it? It was just like. They weren't. They were just like, oh, we're
going to absolve your debts or something.
Yeah, we'll just let you live. Right, okay, dude's already dead. I'm off the hook. I think I'll go, but not our boy.
No, he decides to hang around. Now this is sort of an interesting point because he meets this woman inside this house, and they have a bit of a kerfuffle, and it's kind of weird because her character and her either husband or ex-husband's character who turns up aren't in any way sort of integral to this story. And it's almost as if, and I do kind of like this idea, it's almost as if they're from a different film. And just happen to, because they've got this whole backstory, they're talking about stuff that we've got no clue. They're sort of point of reference, but it's kind of like Mr. Pink yelling at Mr. White in Reservoir Dogs before we actually know what's happening. And sort of spilling all these details. We were set up. The cops were waiting for us and all this sort of stuff. You kind of get that sort of feel from these two.
Do you think that's going to be a thing? That's going to be like one of the next projects. These two, whatever this kind of Bonnie and Clyde.
I don't know, but I mean, it would have to be a prequel. But spoilers. But I just do like this idea of other characters sort of acting in their own film. It's so rather than just having a story in isolation and everyone serving that story. They've got their own agendas. They've got their own things going on, which sort of orbit around it. One of my favorite examples of this, I don't know if you've seen S. Darko, the sequel to Donnie Darko.
Right? It's not a bad film at all, actually.
It's not I talk about it a lot on this
it's
podcast.
good. It's really good.
But there's a bit in that where these two guys turn up in the middle of all the weird shit that's happening, and these two, they're basically men in black. And they you just see them walking around town every now and again, or walking into one of the restaurants or stores or bars or whatever, and they never have any dialogue, but they're just there. And it's like, there's a whole Men in backstory just sort of orbiting what was actually going on, which I thought was
with the
just
whole time
really,
loop thing that was happening.
yeah, exactly. They've been sort of drawn there for a reason. But I just do like that sort of idea. Obviously, the danger is not to make it more interesting than your central narrative.
Yeah,
Then you got an issue.
Yeah, which at the point it was happening, kind of that is what happened. To be fair, because I think that what was happening in LA at the start was quite there was quite a lot going on, and it advanced itself quite well, and then I think it took a really bloody long time to
shift
sort of,
gears and get back up to speed.
Yeah, when he got to the UK, it was that kind of quite ponderous one last job set up, and then he sort of ends up in the place and sees that his target is already.
Well, he has to go through. He has to basically go through 2 interviews, doesn't he? I mean, before he gets it, because he's got his guy Reggie sort of giving him the job in the first place.
Yeah. Did you recognise him, by the way?
I know he's called Bill Culbertson, but I'm not sure where he's from.
Was he? What, the Reggie guy?
Reggie,
I thought, I could have sworn it was Nick Cotton.
Really?
Was it not?
No, apparently not.
I didn't actually check the credits, but I was like, blimey, that's like, I was thinking that was their sort of box office draw.
Yeah, Nick Cotton. But
do you not think he was the dead spit?
I never watched EastEnders ever.
I
especially in the early years, years of it. But then again, my mate Richard Neal, he used to be the spitting image of Nick Cotton. So
really,
yeah,
oh, yeah, no, yeah, he did, yeah, I can see that. Yeah.
But so he has this whole thing where the job's laid out for him, and then he has to go see the Asian American lady at this sort of like S&M club.
Yeah.
And then go across to Wales. It's like, okay, weird sort of setup. But then, it's, as you say, it's like, well, it had its motor running and then it stalled, and then you're having to give it a bit of a push start to sort of get it going again. But it does get interesting. The thing with the sort of the woman and the sort of the ex, they just sort of bicker for a bit, and so our guy Randy, he must be off having a poo or something, because then he just sort of walks in the room. It's like, oh, hello, sort of, oh, what's going on here, sort of thing. But it was, I mean, overall, I thought this was fun. There was some sort of weird bits, like the fact that the gun that he and this other girl have only has 1 bullet in it. There's the whole bit with the girl's sister, which I think was some very dubious choices for the hero to make at that point.
He wasn't really a hero, was he?
He wasn't really. Well, yeah, the classic part of the film is when he's given this ultimatum of, give us your firstborn and we'll spare your life.
Yeah.
And he's going, so you really let me go?
He thought about it.
He thought really long and hard about it, which I just thought was great.
He's just not a hero at all, is he?
No.
I don't know what he was. I mean, actually, to be honest with you, it was like that. Yeah, that was good, because they'd really set him up to be an absolute. He was a bum, wasn't he? He was like a sort of chronic gambler, and he was in the right state, and he's not really being offered one last job. He's being told, do it or we'll do you in, sort of thing. It wasn't the best offer in the world, and then that kind of sealed like actually he is a bit of a heel. But he was quite interesting. He was a good. He was a good character from that point of view.
Absolutely. He was very different to what you'd expect. Now we can't get away from the fact that this was shot on a shoestring. There is no money in this at all, really. Having said that, this isn't your typical running up and down corridors kind of film. It has multiple locations, which is quite good. Like we said, we talked about we've got the jail cell, we got the club, the casino, we got the house. There's quite a lot sort of going on.
There is a lot of static shots, which I think kind of is what marks it out as being.
Yeah, static shots and sound effects are the two real bugbears of low budget films, I think. And there's many a film which could have benefited from a bit more money in the sound effects department. But I thought the demon masks were pretty good.
They were. The effects, the creature effects.
Yeah,
weren't bad. There were actually some really quite original. The one that kind of comes and threatens him when he's on the sofa before the mysterious man kind of comes through the door. I thought that was like a really interesting take on it. That was, I think, for my mind, this sort of weird long-haired, pale face.
Yes, she was really good.
Because that was really frightening, because it was like the rest of them were sort of they were scary, but they were quite OTT, quite Fangoria looking.
Yeah, exactly.
But what you'd expect, and they were good. But that one was actually genuinely, genuinely.
Her makeup was done really, really well.
Yeah.
But that was pretty cool. Overall, I think this is quite enjoyable. I think it could be a little bit shorter than it is.
Yes.
And mainly because of that sort of wraparound bit. It's like we get a sort of conclusion to what's going on with Randy and this woman and this weird guy, and then we get this whole other scene back at the prison.
Which didn't really answer many questions for me, if I'm honest.
Not really, though. I think it sort of allowed us to know who was actually in charge.
Yeah,
and that's about it.
And there was the three kind of the three sort of people who were like on disciplinary. Basically. Like they were just sort of sat having lunch in kind of what appeared to be a deserted country club.
Yes.
And that was and it's like, this is just a weird way to sort of end it, to end a film like this. It's just
it was a bit, I suppose what it's sort of trying to say is like there's more to come, I guess, or maybe more with that sort of coven. Yeah, and again, it sort of speaks to that idea that sort of the story we're presented with is only a part of a bigger sort of narrative, which I think is fine, but maybe it needed a bit more.
Yeah, I think that was it. It's that thing of less is more, leave people guessing and trying to work it out themselves. And it's like, but you were too sparing, and I couldn't work out how this kind of weird organized crime group that were like a sort of they seemed like a pyramid scheme, the way you know what I mean, like the way
it really did. And that's the thing that there's been quite a few films recently where they've kind of shot themselves in the foot when it comes to their villains, because they show them as being too fallible, and they sort of lose their menace a bit. And I think that's the thing here. These guys seem a bit too desperate for what they want, the way they sort of talk about it.
When they're all sat there, like, and it's all that kind of sort of paranoid, oh no, we're for the chop if we don't pull our act together. And it was all like sort of, what's that, Glengarry, Glen Ross?
Yes, that's exactly what I was just thinking. Except, it's Glengarry, Glen Ross if Alec Baldwin hadn't been on screen. If you take him away from the film and just have the others shit themselves over the fact they're not meeting their targets, then that's kind of how this film builds up at the end.
It was weird. It was just a weird ending to like, well, hang on, you just had a bloke in like rural Wales fighting demons, and then it's this. Like,
here we are in Folsom County Jail, sort of like sort of dealing with a snitch or whatever.
And then in a kind of conference hotel where you just expect them to get a flip chart out. Do you know what I mean? It was odd. It was very odd. I enjoyed it, but it was really strange.
It was very strange, yeah. Okay, so out of a score of 10, how are you going to score this one, Will?
All in all, I think it was hugely ambitious, and I think, like you said, it was extremely low budget, and you could see, but they were painstaking with it, and it was entertaining. So I couldn't give it less than a 7 without feeling cruel. But it was, it did suffer from like those things that low budget filmmaking does. It would be hard to sort of give it, more. I don't want to feel grudging. But the production, I think, got in the way of a decent story.
I think so, yeah. But I definitely give it merit for, not just being set in the house. For one thing. I did like the use of the house as well, because it was just a normal sort of typical 3-bedroom sort of like council house or whatever. Not some typical. The way
Ghostly mansion.
Exactly, a lot of American films would go for sort of some really spacious sort of thing. This is quite cramped. Like there's a scene where Randy's having to go upstairs, and it's sort of typical sort of cramped sort of British staircase.
Yeah.
So I definitely commend it on that. But I overall I'm giving this a 6 out of 10. Not far off where you are. It's definitely entertaining. But yeah,
you're feeling sterner about the production values, aren't you?
A little bit, yeah. A bit of polish, bit more. Maybe a run through more of the dialogue. There was one line which I thought was hilarious about. We don't have time to discuss demonology when your life's on the line, or something like those sort of lines.
Yeah,
But,
and it's not a conversation that would be being had, is it?
No,
people are going to be traumatized and wondering how they can get out of this situation. It's like, you could just slim down that dialogue a little bit in that point. Yeah,
absolutely. But manage your expectations. This isn't a big budget film, but having said that, it is definitely entertaining, and you should go check it out. So it's a 6 and a 7 for Demons at Dawn. Our next review is Reportage, also known as Reportage November. A mysterious death of a mother and the disappearance of a child leads a group of freelance journalists to the outback of Sweden. The group of 4, led by the famous journalist Linn Söderqvist, will make a reportage about the happening and try to find something the police missed. Equipped with cameras and supplies to survive in the forest for days, they wander out in the woods to find the truth. This is the kind of found footage film I really like. This is dressed up as if it was a proper documentary. Complete with talking heads, with people sort of like filling us in on background, who they are and stuff, and it has a real authentic feel to it as well. So we got this this setup. There's a mysterious death of this woman and the disappearance of a child. We find out that the police haven't really done a lot to investigate it overall. The father or the husband of the missing woman, or the dead woman, is pretty distraught. And this film crew have been sort of put together by a mysterious company who are backing them to sort of do this, especially this guy, Linn Söderqvist. And he's sort of brought in sort of people who are well known in the field, or freelance journalists and that sort of thing, to go out in the wilderness with him. It's not long before we start to realize that something's up.
Yeah. I texted you actually when I was watching it, because like it really doesn't take long until you're I don't know. I mean, like I don't want to be spoilery with this, because I actually I really thought this was very good on a lot of points. There's only a few things that I'll take issue with and say that's unfortunate, and that they kind of were a bit kind of stuck in the throat a little bit about it, but on the whole it's a brilliant film. But like, I did text you because I was like, this character is clearly a wrong one. What the hell, how come no one is like, because if I was there on that crew, I'd be like, no, okay, stop you there. What the hell are you doing? And you sort of receiving mysterious phone calls, and then not, like in the middle of a critical point, like you're talking to the bereaved husband.
Yeah,
like, what
exactly.
the hell? Like, where's your head at on this particular project, sort of thing? That's do you want to tell us what's going on?
Yeah, you'd have thought they'd have taken them to task on it, wouldn't they? They just
straight away.
Let's okay, back to one.
And it's like, well, what the hell? Like, this is that. But that was genius to my mind, because that immediately, I mean, it was very obvious, but it was like you're immediately thinking, this isn't right. Like they're talking to this chap who's like, lost his family. This is and he's moaning about not having been taken seriously, and everyone's ignoring it. And the producer takes a mobile phone call and sods off into the trees. And you're like, what?
I know. Exactly, because he's just telling them like, oh, they wouldn't even allow me to see the body. That we go, okay, that's interesting. Phone call.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah. And you're like, I don't think you're showing the proper attitude here. And we're all here because you're supposed to be, pulling this thing together and like leading us.
Yeah, exactly.
What's going on?
Yeah. One of the other really interesting parts about that particular interview is that all of a sudden, because they're picked up from this train station, they're in the back end of Sweden, which has this sort of huge, forest area where not many people go, and
because you can get lost and die.
Yeah, basically, very quickly.
Not supernaturally, but just because the temperatures are well below zero.
Just because it's such a shitty place to be.
Yeah, and it's huge, and you're miles from anywhere.
Yeah, so they're picked up from the station by this woman who's all very jolly and stuff, and sort of takes them to the where this guy lives, the bereaved husband. And mid-interview, suddenly you hear the doors slam, and she drives off, and it's dumped all their kit there, going, "You can go from here." And it's like, okay,
yeah,
what?
I'll pick you up in 2 days, and you're what?
Exactly.
For a bit of context, she's like the local guide.
That's right. Yeah, she's supposed to be the local guide.
Yeah, and she knows what they're doing. They're about to embark on this kind of research, fact finding, try and see what they can find out in these remote woods, see if they can find any clues that the perfunctory police search didn't. They're going to be out there for 2 days. It's winter, and they're strangers in the area. And she's like, "Oh, I've got something to handle. I'll see you in 2 days. Bye." And you're like, "That's it. That's their support gone."
Yeah, that's it. Yeah. Will she even be there after 2 days?
I would have been going back to the train station at that point. Yeah,
exactly. But yes, into the woods they go. Anyway, one of the issues I had, and they did actually kind of clear this up later on, is from a found footage point of view. There are a couple of shots where somebody must have run ahead, planted their camera, gone back, just so they could film the four of them sort of trudging through the forest. Yeah, there's only four. You know what I mean? There's only four of them, but they actually do that later on. There's a bit where they actually do sort of set up the camera, put it down, and then all stand in front of it doing their thing. So I'm thinking, well, okay, that's possible. It might have been useful to show them doing that the first time, but there you go.
I mean, because if you think about it, no one in the reality of the film, they're not setting out to make a found footage thing. They're setting out to make a documentary.
Indeed.
So they're not just somewhat. It's like there has to be a reality behind, like a convincing and compelling reality behind the project that ends up being found footage.
Yeah, exactly.
Which weirdly, I mean, it's actually not really, because
that's right.
It's going to be because they're not all. I don't want to be spoilery again. I suppose you can edit this, but they didn't have to. No one had to find the footage really.
Exactly. So this is one area that a lot of found footage in inverted commas go wrong, is the question of how are we watching this footage? Who found it? How is it being presented to us as an audience? And that's where a lot of things go wrong. But it's not necessarily found footage. It's being presented to us as a proper documentary. That includes the footage that some of the footage they shot, which gives it a lot more sort of authenticity, and it takes away that sort of like that sort of doubt about what you're actually sort of watching. It's like because normally I'm watching found footage. If I saw something like, well, there's all the principal characters in the film all in one shot, how are we seeing that? You know what I mean? Or something like in the Blair Witch sequel, which was just called Blair Witch. They've edited the footage together. It says at the beginning, we've taken all the footage, we've edited together. And there's footage of like the camera just like peeking out the window of the car as it drives past them, going,
How's
why
that
did
shot?
you include this? Why? Well, no, just why did you include this in the film? Because it's shot from inside of the car looking out. But that's literally all it is. It is like 2 minutes of footage of just. I'm thinking, really, you've edited this together and you thought that was pertinent to your story?
Yeah,
But,
not this story. I mean, this is it, isn't it? Because it's
Yeah.
like, you know, to work, it has to be real, like verite, doesn't it? It has to be like, it has to be real. And if someone's like we found this footage from this mysterious, you know, there's a load of people, you know, missing and dead, you're not going to you wouldn't, as a kind of editor or filmmaker, be really going to town on that kind of stuff, because it would be it would be kind of a bit disrespectful to what you're actually trying to present.
Absolutely.
Like, to sort of make a big song and dance about, you know, mise en scène or whatever. Like,
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. We need to set up the ambience. You know, we need to all this. Sort of
no,
stuff.
you don't. You're presenting like the last, you know, the last known footage of these, when these people were seen alive, kind of thing. Not trying to get an Oscar for best editing and cinematography.
Yeah, exactly.
But at the same time, we are watching a movie.
Indeed. Yeah. Now, and speaking of, going back to the whole thing with the mobile phone, it sets up two things. The whole thing with the mobile phone, you know, beeping, you know, two things. It forces, or it compels one of the characters to force everyone to hand over their mobile phones.
How? I take issue with that.
So all the mobile phones go into the audio guy's bag.
Did nothing strike you about that as being
Of course.
Oh,
as soon as it happened, I knew the audio guy was not going to be around too long. Or, you know what I mean? It's like hand over all your all your automatic rifle clips.
Yeah.
To the one guy. Yeah.
Give him all your bags and smartphone connectors. Right, he's gone.
That's it. Yeah. What are those guns called? Pulse rifles?
Pulse rifles, that's
Pulse
it. Yeah, give him all your and smart guns.
You can't be shooting down here. You blow up the reactor. Give all your ammunition to one guy.
Why?
Brilliant plan. So we disabled any chance of getting help because nobody's going to have a mobile. The other thing it does is it makes us recognize his mobile ring, you know, his telephone ring, and that becomes an important point later on in the film. So from that point of view, it's an interesting setup, or half an interesting setup and half a really obvious one.
It's just jarring because it's like they're not four. They can be trusted to turn their phones off, so they don't need to
think so. Just like show me you've turned your phone off. Okay, you should turn it off. Good. Okay.
Yeah.
It's on mute now. Good. Okay.
Yeah.
That's all you need. You don't need to hand it over. I'm surprised nobody kicked up a fuss.
Exactly. I don't think I'm going to do that.
My phone? No, Jesus.
Well, it's cool.
It's like losing a limb. I've left my phone in the car before, and I'm like, I don't know what to do with myself. I've actually, you know, when I was working on site, and I'd walk into the office, and I go, "Oh crap! I left my phone in my car, which is, 500 yards in the car park." I've actually gone back to get it immediately.
Yeah.
You know, I'm not gonna spend half a day without my phone. How dare you?
And that's in a a nice climate control office,
exactly.
Not in the freezing Swedish forest.
These people are media professionals. Their phone should be like stuck to their hand,
Exactly, and they should be trusted. They should be trusted to know how to operate it in it while they're trying to shoot a quite sensitive documentary.
Indeed, yeah, exactly. You'd think so. But anyway, so that's the mobile phone issue. Obviously, we've both got issues there. But the rest of it, I think, for the most part, it works really well. It does build in this sort of nice sort of mystery. We get some weird carvings on rocks and things. We finally find the pram that they were looking for in a very unusual position. And then, they eventually sort of find this house. And what I liked about this, not only the sort of scary bits, but the world building that came with it, because all of a sudden we're in like, I don't know, sort of like corporate Resident Evil sort of territory.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There's a sort of element of like Umbrella Corps sort of going on of, what's really going on, and you know, when they find the you know, the other video camera and sort of learn they're not exactly the first people to come through here, sort of thing.
Yeah. That's, I mean, that, and there's the thing about this is there is a lot of really interesting, nice little clues that,
Because
you know,
that was
are
the
sort
other
of
thing as well, is that they're carrying mobile antennas with them so they could live stream.
yeah,
And
yeah,
you're thinking, why would you need to live stream this? You know,
yeah. And that was
it just
quite
seemed
an interesting point, because when things started going, when, you know, when the kind of the horror stuff started getting into really high gear, it actually took them quite a while to sort of remember that actually people are watching all of this.
Yeah,
And
that's right.
what, you know, why is no one kind of sending any kind of help?
Yeah, exactly.
You know, because like the thing is, that didn't twig with me either. But then it's just another layer of the story.
Yeah.
You know, like you said.
But that's the thing I liked about it as well, is that you can actually see the thought process of these sort of corporate people.
Yeah,
It's like, you know, they send in a team, things go wrong, they don't get the footage they're after, so they send in another team with live streaming equipment.
yeah,
So it doesn't matter if they don't actually get the physical bit; they can still
yeah.
download. You know, which was really interesting and well thought out, I thought.
I mean, I spent the funny thing is, I spent a lot of time in this because of, well, basically purely because of um the mobile phone thing. And there's I mean, obviously this is for me a foreign language film. It's, you know, it's Swedish with subtitles. And there was a couple of times when I was like, you know, is this the original script or the translation? But it was just jarred a bit, because like the news reports that you watch, because you're seeing like news reports from, you know, the Swedish news at the time, about the original disappearance and stuff, and the way that they're sort of talking about, like, the, you know, the police investigation, and then just the kind of pieces to camera just come over a bit weird. They just don't sound 100% right, and it's like, well, obviously I don't watch Swedish news and TV because I don't live in Sweden, I don't speak it, but I'm
get the
pretty
impression,
sure.
Yeah, to get the impression also that nobody loses their temper in Sweden.
Oh yeah, it's incredibly
You
kind
know?
of, yeah, no, because they have to be, things have to be really out of control for them to. But it wasn't. It was just, yeah, it just seemed like a thing. Everyone's very calm.
They're
Very
really calm until they're not. But you
yeah,
know, you think any, you know, if it was an American thing, you know, or something like, even like Blair Witch, you know, they'd have lost their shit a lot earlier.
oh yeah, yeah. No, the
than these
hysteria
guys
set
do.
in. The hysteria set in well early on that,
Yeah,
because that Blair Witch sequel I actually really like. I prefer it. The original's brilliant, but that sequel's really good. I really enjoyed it.
There's two sequels. There's the Book of Shadows, which I haven't seen, which is actually set in the world where the Blair Witch film happened, which is
Oh, okay.
interesting, which I haven't seen. It's supposed to be quite good. But then there's the other one, which I didn't like because it came across as just like a 90-minute advert for GoPro cameras.
Oh, I can see your point on that, actually. To be fair, yeah.
But
But I thought it was quite good. I thought it was like,
I've got issues with that one.
enough.
I'll talk about it later. But
Fair enough.
yeah,
For
okay,
another show.
for another day. Yeah. So this one, Reportage, how are you going to score it, Will?
Sure. To be fair, you can probably tell I'm going to give it quite a high score, because I'd be happy to talk about it a lot longer, although we're heading deep into spoiler territory.
That's the problem. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
and
just cut us off before we go too deep
yeah,
into
no, it's
spoilers.
a damn good film, and I would want to recommend it. And it's definitely, to my mind, I'd say it's at least an 8. It's an 8. It's a solid 8 from me.
Yeah,
I don't.
that's what I'm going to give it. Yeah, definitely
Yeah.
2 8s. 2 8s for Reportage. Go check it out. Our short shot this week is Dead End. A contract killer is sent from London to Hong Kong on an assignment with a younger hitman, but their plans are derailed when the seasoned killer's past leaves both men questioning their motives. Okay, so this stars and was written by Brian Larkin, who is a very interesting actor. He was the bad guy in a film called Chasing the Dragon with Donnie Yen and Andy Lau, where he played this sort of really sort of like brutish British constable, and he was absolutely brilliant in that. It's one of those roles where, you know, we get a lot of guys out in Hong Kong, sort of British actors, try to make their mark and not being particularly good. But then every now and again you get someone like Darren Shalavi, you know, making a big impression, and so did Brian in that particular film. He's also the SAS captain in London Has Fallen. And you know, he was in the first I Am Vengeance film for Ross Boyask, as we know. And here he is in a very handsomely produced film that he wrote. I think, you know, this looks top end. You know, really well directed. Good locations all the way through this film. You know, both in London and Hong Kong, with a really strong storyline. We saw this quite a few years ago now in the Fighting Spirit Film Festival, and we've both been kind of waiting for it to come out.
Since 2018.
2018, that's right.
Because this was made in 2017, and we saw it at the 2018 festival.
Yeah. So, is it as good as you remember it, Rich?
It is. Yeah, I still think, you know, it's definitely a cut above the, you know, some of the other. I mean, in terms of the international aspects of it, you know, that you get those great cityscapes, which I believe it's all shot on location. I think, you know, that you could say that's like stock footage or something, but I think it is all.
Doesn't look at it. No,
I think it's all been shot for the movie. And you mentioned Chasing the Dragon. I think he made this as a side project while he was making that film, because they were both 2017.
Yeah.
So he would have been over there at the time. So the film has been shot at different times. So you've got Brian in some scenes where he's got a beard, and some scenes where he hasn't got the beard and stuff. So you get to see different sides of him. And there are scenes shot in London, say Hong Kong, and so it's very international. So there's a lot of production value and a lot of scale, you know, to it. And it's, you know, it's a short story. I think it's less than 20 minutes.
Yeah.
And yeah, it was 19 minutes. And directed by Carter Ferguson. The interesting thing for me watching it so many years later is this week I also watched the film Vixen, in which Brian Larkin and Julian Gartner also appeared.
All right.
And that was a full-length feature, and it just looks cheap rubbish compared to this. Right. You know, it's just like, this is, and you know, the quality of the action and basically everything about this movie is, you know, this little 20-minute film is just so superior to that hour and a half, you know, Die Hard knockoff film that I was really looking forward to, but was terrible. But I was on another Fighting Spirit note. One of the other reasons that I really wanted to see it was Max Raposi. Who was at the Fighting Spirit Festival and, you know, passed away, and was paid tribute in the 2021 festival. Yeah. So good to finally see that for him in there. But again, you know, Dead End is just so much better in all respects, and it's free. You know, you can just watch it on YouTube. It's the first. This led on to 2 other films. So Brian directed the second one, and then Ross Boyask did the third. The third I still haven't seen.
Yeah, same here. Yeah.
But you know, I can only anticipate that they, you know, bring the same level. I mean, Dead End 2, you know, continued the story and had the same kind of aesthetic. Yeah. And Brian did well with that. And I expect Ross has built on that as well. But I believe it's quite a different story, the third one. But focusing on this one, so it's got voiceover narration and stuff, which can be a bit annoying, but I think Brian's just got such a great voice.
He has got such a great voice. Yeah, if you know, he's up there with the likes of Morgan Freeman. You know, if you're listening, you know, if you wanted someone to narrate your sort of documentary or audiobook or something, he's the sort of guy you want.
Yeah,
because
he's got a
he's
great voice. He
such a
does.
listenable voice, you know.
It's a great Scottish accent.
Yeah,
It's,
exactly.
just- And I'm not sure. Does he usually? Is he always? I mean, I haven't seen many. I've got a couple of his films that I need to watch. But in Chasing the Dragon stuff, is he using his natural accent in that, or is he playing? Because sometimes they get a Scot or a Brit to play in America.
I made a horrible mistake because I talked to him about it when I saw him, because he's got a proper, English accent in Chasing the Dragon.
Oh, okay.
And he was dubbed basically.
Oh.
Because it's one of those filming places, like India and in Italy, where the sort of background noise is just too much. They just dub everything, and I'd forgotten that when I was like, oh, you must be good at accents, Brian. And he's like, no, yeah. But even so, even though his voice was dubbed, he's brilliant in it. It's one of those great sort of British guys going over to Hong Kong and making a mark kind of roles. But yes, and even in I can't remember in London Has Fallen if he's got a Scottish accent or a British accent. Yeah, and I saw it quite recently as well. I can't remember. I have to have a look. But even so,
it's been well worth the wait to see it. To finally see it again, and it didn't disappoint. And
not at
all. I'm hoping that part two will
come out soon,
not too far away, and finally get to see the third.
Yeah, and on that note, we don't score these shorts, but we certainly recommend them. And you will find the link to this one. It's on Vimeo. You'll find the link in the footnotes below. Please go check it out. Our DTV throwback this week is Outpost Black Sun. A gutsy Nazi hunter called Helena is trying to locate a notorious Nazi scientist called Klausner and tracks his location to a mysterious bunker situated in the middle of a war-torn part of Europe. This is the sequel to Outpost, which starred Ray Stevenson, a film I very much enjoyed. I actually like this one better, though, Rich. I actually think this has got better production values.
Me too. That was one of the things that really surprised me when I watched it. I was expecting, because Outpost, Ray Stevenson, 2008, I think it was a cinema release movie, but it was low budget, and it was kind of like a variation on like an Event Horizon kind of scenario, if I recall, something like that. And I really liked it, and I've always really wanted to see the sequel, but I never got around to it until now. But I'd always thought it was going to be low budget DTV sequel kind of thing. And no, it's a film with, like you say, real production value. It looks bigger and more expensive.
Absolutely.
Unless I'm misremembering, because it's been a long time. But I remember the first one being very down to earth and sort of, whereas this one's got plenty of, it's not like there's. We watched Bunker 717 recently.
That's right. Yeah.
And it wasn't like we had one Nazi zombie kind of monster creature. We got loads of them in. There's there is literally an army of them, and it's all very, very good prosthetics and makeup and stuff going on. So right from the outpost, I didn't really say that, but right from the outset, I was thinking, wow, this is quite an impressive film. I wasn't expecting it to be this. It is the same director, Steve Barker, and I think that I'll let you sort of expound on your thoughts a bit more. But I will say, just that initial impression was good, and the film kind of from there, it didn't disappoint me really.
Yeah. So as I said, we've got this character Helena. When we first meet her, she's I think somewhere in Argentina or something, and meeting this doctor. She pretends to be his niece to get close enough, but then all of a sudden she's like breaking his fingers and stuff, and we find out no, actually she's a Nazi hunter trying to track down these people who've escaped justice for far too long.
It's reminding me of it's kind of a short film kind of feel to it, because I've seen quite a few short films about sort of Nazi hunters and stuff like that, and it certainly sort of played that kind of prologue kind of thing, and I thought that worked really well. And that's where I first got the impression of, this looks really good.
Yeah,
it's really well shot, and the performances are really interesting and stuff. And yeah, that's where all the sort of the groundwork is laid for the sort of the story that's going to take place.
Yeah. So she ends up heading towards what I'm assuming it's the same bunker that was in.
I assume so as well.
Yeah,
yes.
in the
that
first film.
Returning to the same location.
Yeah,
from the
because
first film.
there is mention of, there's a really great scene where we have this other Nazi guy who's sent people in, he sent like Spetsnaz guys or something into this area, and they make a point of sort of saying, we can't find anyone from your previous group who'd gone in there, and just fresh blood or something, which I'm assuming was a reference to what had happened in the first film. But even that scene I thought was great. Just that sort of control room where they're sort of like watching the monitors of everything.
Mm-hmm.
Just really well done. I thought it was great. Then, alongside Catherine Stedman, who's our main character Helena, we also get Richard Coyle, who when I first saw this, I'd just seen him in something recently as well. I'm just going to see if I remember what it was.
You could easily confuse him with Martin Sheen, not Martin Sheen, Michael Sheen.
Yeah.
He's got a very Michael Sheen kind of look. But yeah, Coyle's been around for ages, and I wasn't.
Grabbers.
Again, him being in this again sort of quite elevates it, because you think, wow, okay, so Richard Coyle's in this. Unfortunately, they've got him doing an American accent, which he's fine, but I would rather he wasn't. But
Irish or something, yeah. So he was in Grabbers, which I thought was a really good.
I've always wanted to see that.
One.
I've come to see it.
That was a good one. But yeah, he's really good in this. Is this sort of almost like a sort of renegade scientist, sort of like trying to track down this sort of Nazi technology.
It's one of those. The two characters, male female, team up to go and investigate and find something, and then they team up with the. So it's got that kind of classic sort of sci-fi horror kind of setup to it, hasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And as you mentioned, we mentioned the production design already, the production values. They bear this out basically. So it's got enough budget to sort of convey, this sort of element, this sort of life-giving machine kind of thing that's been built within this bunker. I just thoroughly enjoyed this. I thought it was really, really good.
So we've got Julian Wadham returning from the first one as Hunt. Now, do you know which character Hunt is? Because I'm not sure. Was he one of the Nazis, or was?
I think he's the Nazi who's like controlling everything.
Yeah, because I've got to be honest, I'm not very good with character
he's sort of,
names.
he's sort of at the beginning and the end, because they mention him again, sort of towards the end, in that sort of epilogue scene that we get.
Okay. And that's so good. Yeah, sort of jumping ahead a bit, but I thought the end was great. It was one of those really great sort of setup endings where I was like, yes. Bring it on. I was like, right. And then I looked up because there is a third film, and I looked it up, and it's not a continuation whatsoever.
It's a real step down, unfortunately.
And by complete coincidence, the star of the movie is Brian Larkin.
Is it?
I believe. He's definitely in it. I think he's the main character. But the
so long. I can't even remember if I watched the whole.
It's not made by Steve Barker.
Yeah,
the third one, which is subtitled Rise.
I think it's like a Russian thing. The third one, it's sort of Russian.
Yeah, it's directed by Kieran Parker, who I'm presuming is a relation. But it's I do want to. I do want to see it, but I was at the end of this movie, I sort of went, "Oh, is Richard Coyle in the or whoever is any of the characters going to be in the next one?" And the cast looked completely new, so I was like, that's a bit disappointing.
It is.
There's such a great setup.
It's a Red Army. Is it called Red Army or something like that? The third one.
What? Rise of the Spetsnaz.
That's right. Yeah. I didn't enjoy it as much, that one, unfortunately.
Yeah, I
but
think
this
in
is
that
solid.
one, because this was shot in Scotland, I believe, a lot of it, and the same as the first one. But I don't know if the third one was. But anyway, we're not.
Yeah.
I don't want to dwell too much on going into
What
the
we're
third
not
one, which I
covering,
haven't seen. What might be, but this. So what we got? So it's the same writer, I think, as the third one, probably the first one as well. But yeah, the main characters are good. The character development's really good. They team up with a bunch of can they be trusted kind of mercenary characters. That all works really well. There's attrition along the way, or there's various fatalities. But and the attacks are they're big and brutal, really well played. There's a couple of scenes with some dodgy visual effects which I wasn't quite sure about. There's a bit towards the end, but the production design, of some of the sets, I just thought worked really well. Was it did they build it, or was it just sort of clever visual effects, sort of not matte paintings, but you know what I'm saying, is that have they built it in a computer or something? But it looked pretty convincing to me. I was really impressed. I thought this is definitely a film that I would revisit and watch and try and delve a little bit deeper into getting to know the character, familiarize, like a John Carpenter movie or something that I really like. It's just go back and say, I want to watch this again and sort of go through this story. And I thought they did the whole thing has worked out really well, and it does again make me want to revisit the original. But I do remember the original being as good as it was. I do remember it being a very modestly budgeted film, and this looks like a theatrical. If they'd almost need to be flipped, because this one looks like the one that should have been on a cinema screen, whereas the first one didn't. So and this was a DTV, and find it on Freevee kind of movie.
Yes, so you can find this one on as Rich said, Freebie, which is the sort of free to view service from Amazon. Do you actually need an Amazon account or not to view this? Don't know.
No, well, you mean you have to have a. I don't know if you have to be logged in, but I mean it's definitely watched via Amazon. Another interesting thing that I've just noticed in the credits of this film is the director of Dead End, Carter Ferguson, is in it.
Right.
So that's
interesting
coincidence. We didn't plan that at all. But that's quite fun.
Yeah. We certainly recommend you check this out. As we said, it's on Freebie in the UK. Probably
Freebie.
Some other Freevee or Freebie. Freevee. Yep. Go check it out. It's definitely worth your time. And on that note, that is the end of this week's show. Thanks to Rich and Will for joining me and talking about some very interesting films. Go check them out. All the trailers will be in the footnotes below, as well as the link to Dead End. But yeah, thank you for listening. Tune in next time.
Thank you for listening to the DTV Digest. Let us know your thoughts in the comments and tune in again next time.